The stars stretched endlessly before Commander Zektar as his massive warship dropped out of hyperspace. His red eyes studied the blue and green planet that hung before him like a jewel in the dark. This was the world the humans called Earth, and it would soon belong to the Vorthak Empire. Zekatar's gray skin rippled with satisfaction as he walked across the bridge of his ship. The Stellar Conqueror was over 2 miles long and carried enough firepower to destroy entire cities. He had used ships like this one to crush 47 different worlds. Soon it would be 48. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. They were all tall, powerful beings with thick armor-like skin and 4 arms each. Like all Vorthak, they believed in strength above all else. The weak deserved to be ruled by the strong. It was the natural order of the universe. "Report," Zektar commanded, his voice deep and harsh. Sub-Commander Velak turned from his console. His lower arms typed rapidly while his upper arms gestured at the holographic display. "The scout ships have completed their survey, Commander. This system has one inhabited world with approximately 8 billion humans." Zektar nodded. "And their military strength?" "Pathetic," Velak replied with a sneer. "They have barely achieved basic space travel. No energy shields, no plasma weapons. Their fastest ships would take them months to reach their own moon. Most importantly, they are divided into over 200 separate nations that constantly fight each other." The commander studied the tactical display. It showed Earth's primitive satellites and the handful of small space stations orbiting the planet. A few tiny ships moved between Earth and its moon, but they looked more like cargo haulers than warships. He had seen stronger defenses around mining colonies. "What about their ground forces?" Zektar asked. "Equally primitive," another officer reported. "They still use chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Their most powerful weapons could barely scratch our armor. Intelligence suggests they have something called nuclear weapons, but these are crude devices that would harm them as much as us." Zektar allowed himself a small smile. Every species they had conquered had nuclear weapons. The Vorthak had learned to counter such crude technology centuries ago. "Commander," the communications officer called out, "we are receiving a transmission from the planet. Put it through." The main screen flickered and showed a human male in what appeared to be a military uniform. He was much smaller than a Vorthak, with pale skin and short brown hair. His uniform was simple blue fabric with metal badges. Everything about him looked weak and fragile. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force," the human said. His voice was steady, but Zektar could hear the fear underneath. "Welcome to our solar system. We would like to establish peaceful communication with your people." Zektar stood and faced the screen. When he spoke, his voice filled the bridge, like thunder. "I am Commander Zektar of the Vorthak Empire. You will surrender your world immediately and accept our rule. Your people will serve us as we see fit. You have 72 hours to consider this generous offer." The human captain was quiet for a moment. Zektar expected him to either surrender immediately or make empty threats like most primitive species did. Instead, Morrison surprised him. "We appreciate your offer, Commander, but we must decline. Earth has never bowed to any conqueror, and we won't start now. However, we are willing to discuss other arrangements that might benefit both our peoples." Zektar blinked his red eyes in confusion. This was not the response he expected. Most species either begged for mercy or tried to bluff with weapons they didn't have. The humans seemed to be doing neither. "You do not understand your situation," Zektar said slowly. "We have conquered dozens of worlds. Your primitive weapons cannot harm us. Your divided planet cannot stand against the Vorthak Empire." Morrison nodded. "You may be right about our weapons, Commander, but you're wrong about our unity. When Earth faces an outside threat, we have a way of putting our differences aside. I suggest you reconsider your demands." The transmission ended. Zektar stared at the blank screen, still trying to understand what had just happened. In his experience, there were only 2 types of primitive species. The smart ones surrendered quickly to avoid destruction. The stupid ones made threats they couldn't back up. The humans seemed to be doing something else entirely. "Sir?" Velak asked. "Should we begin the invasion immediately?" "No," Zektar replied. Let them use their 72 hours. I want to see what they do with the time. It will make no difference to the final outcome. As the commander returned to his command chair, he noticed something odd on the sensor display. Ships were moving throughout the human solar system. Not warships, but cargo vessels, mining craft, and passenger transports. They seemed to be gathering near the larger space stations. What are they doing? He wondered aloud. Probably evacuating their leaders, Velak suggested. The smart ones always try to run when they realize they cannot win. But Zektar was not so sure. The movement patterns looked too organized, too purposeful. It reminded him of something, though he could not place what. On Earth, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes watched the alien ship through her telescope at the Deep Space Monitoring Station. She was a xenobiologist, trained to study alien life forms. But right now she was more interested in alien technology. Their ship is beautiful, she said to her assistant. Look at those energy patterns around the hull. That's some kind of shield system we've never seen before. How powerful do you think their weapons are? The assistant asked. Lisa studied the readings. Powerful enough to destroy anything we have. But that's not what worries me most. What does? They're not taking us. Seriously, Lisa said quietly. Look at their formation. One ship. They sent one ship to conquer our entire world. That means they think we're completely helpless. She turned to her communication console and opened a channel to Earth Defense Command. This is Lieutenant Commander Hayes. I need to speak with Admiral Sullivan immediately. While she waited for the connection, Lisa continued studying the alien vessel. There was something about its design that suggested the aliens thought in very rigid, structured ways. Their ship was perfectly symmetrical, with no wasted space or unusual features. It was the kind of design that came from a mind that believed there was only one right way to do things. Hayes here, Admiral, Lisa said when the connection opened. I've been studying the alien ship. I think I know something important about how they think. Go ahead, Admiral Sullivan's voice replied. They're overconfident, ma'am. But more than that, they seem to think in very straight lines. Everything about their ship design suggests they approach problems in conventional ways. I don't think they're prepared for unconventional responses. There was a pause. Then Admiral Sullivan asked, What are you suggesting, Lieutenant Commander? Lisa looked at the tactical display showing Earth's modest defenses. A few orbital platforms, some fighter squadrons, and a handful of ships that were barely more than armed cargo haulers. Against the alien technology, it looked hopeless. But Lisa was beginning to have an idea. I'm suggesting we don't fight them the way they expect us to fight, Admiral. We give them something they've never seen before. Which is... Lisa smiled for the first time since the aliens had arrived. Humans being human, ma'am. Commander Zektar stood on his bridge and watched the red planet Mars grow larger on the main screen. 24 hours had passed since he had given the humans their warning. Now it was time to show them what happened to species that refused to surrender. The Mars colony was perfect for his demonstration. It was small, with only 3,000 humans living in a collection of domes and underground tunnels. The base had minimal defenses, just a few old satellites and some mining equipment. One quick attack would prove to Earth that resistance was pointless. Target their communication arrays first, Zektar ordered. I want Earth to see what happens next, but I don't want Mars calling for help. 6 Vorthak fighters screamed down from orbit. Their sleek black hulls gleamed as they fired precise plasma bolts at the human satellites. The primitive devices exploded in bright flashes, leaving the Mars colony alone and helpless. Major Alex Bennett watched from the command center deep underground as his satellites died one by one. He was a tough man with gray hair and scars from the wars on Earth. He had volunteered for Mars duty because he wanted a quiet posting. Now he wished he was back fighting rebels in Africa. Sir, all communication with Earth is down, reported Sergeant Kim Rodriguez. She was young, barely 25, but she had steady hands and never panicked. The alien fighters are beginning their attack run on the surface installations. Bennett looked at the tactical display. His heart sank as he saw the enemy ships diving toward the colony. The humans had nothing that could stop them. Their defense guns were designed to shoot down meteors, not military spacecraft with energy shields. All personnel to emergency stations, Bennett announced over the intercom. Prepare for full evacuation to the deep shelters. This is not a drill. The first plasma bolts struck the outer domes. The advanced alien weapons cut through the reinforced metal like it was paper. Atmosphere rushed out in white clouds as the domes collapsed. Bennett watched good people running for their lives and felt his anger growing. The Vorthak fighters made another pass. This time they targeted the mining equipment and the landing pads where the supply ships docked. Explosions lit up the Martian sky as millions of dollars worth of machinery turned into twisted metal. Major, Rodriguez said quietly. Look at scanner, Station 5. Bennett turned to see what she was pointing at. The scanner showed something impossible. Instead of cowering in the deep shelters, dozens of humans were moving toward the surface. They were climbing into mining robots, construction vehicles, and even personal transports. What are they doing? Bennett wondered aloud. His answer came over the radio. Major Bennett, this is Luis Mendez in Mining Robot 7. Request permission to engage the enemy. Bennett grabbed his microphone. Luis, are you insane? Those are combat fighters with shields and plasma cannons. You're driving a machine designed to dig holes. Maybe so, sir, Luis replied. But I've got a full load of mining charges and a ram that can punch through solid rock. If I can get close enough, I might be able to do some damage. Before Bennett could respond, more voices filled the radio channels. This is Dr. Sarah Kim in Medical Transport 2. I've loaded up with oxygen tanks and medical supplies. If I detonate the oxygen, it might create enough of an explosion to hurt them. Construction Chief Tom Wilson here, Major. I've got a dozen welding torches and a full tank of acetylene. My crew and I are ready to go. Bennett felt his chest tighten with pride and fear. These people weren't soldiers. They were miners, doctors, engineers, and technicians. They had families back on Earth. But they were willing to die rather than surrender without a fight. Listen to me, all of you, Bennett said into his microphone. Those alien ships have energy shields. Our weapons can't penetrate them. This is suicide. Maybe, Major, Luis replied. But we're not just going to hide underground while they destroy everything we built. Besides, I've got an idea about those shields. Bennett looked at Rodriguez. She was staring at the scanner display with wide eyes. Major, they're not attacking randomly. Look at the pattern. Bennett studied the tactical screen. She was right. The alien fighters were moving in precise formations, making calculated strikes at specific targets. It was efficient and methodical, but it was also predictable. They fight like machines, Rodriguez whispered. Everything by the book. Bennett grabbed his helmet and started toward the exit. Where are you going, sir? Rodriguez asked. To join the most insane military operation in human history, Bennett replied. You have command of the shelter. If this goes badly, make sure Earth knows what happened here. 5 minutes later, Bennett was climbing into the largest mining robot on Mars. The machine was 30 feet tall and designed to drill through solid rock. It had never been intended for combat, but it was about to become a weapon of war. The radio crackled with nervous voices as 24 human vehicles moved toward the surface. They had mining robots, construction mechs, cargo haulers, and even a mobile laboratory. None of them were weapons, but their pilots were determined to make them count. Luis Mendez reached the surface first. Through his robot's cameras, he could see the Vorthak fighters making another attack run on the communications tower. The sleek alien ships moved in perfect formation, their plasma cannons charging for another precise strike. Here they come, Luis announced. Everyone remember the plan. We hit them from different directions at the same time. Their shields might stop our weapons, but let's see how they handle 20 targets attacking at once. The Vorthak pilots noticed the human vehicles emerging from underground. They were confused by what they saw. These weren't military machines. They looked like industrial equipment, clumsy and slow. The pilots almost laughed as they turned to attack these primitive contraptions. That was their first mistake. Luis fired his mining charges directly at the lead fighter. The explosives bounced harmlessly off the energy shield, just as expected. But Luis wasn't trying to destroy the ship. He was trying to distract it. While the alien pilot focused on the mining robot in front of him, Dr. Kim rammed her medical transport into the fighter's side. Her oxygen tanks exploded on impact, creating a massive fireball that surrounded the alien ship. The energy shield held, but for a few seconds, the pilot couldn't see anything through the flames and smoke. That was when Tom Wilson struck from above, diving his construction mech down like a missile and smashing into the fighter's top surface. The impact threw both machines to the ground, but Wilson's mech was built to survive cave-ins and explosions. The alien fighter was built for speed and precision. Wilson climbed out of his damaged mech and watched with satisfaction as the enemy ship struggled to take off with its bent wing and damaged engines. All across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. The humans couldn't destroy the Vorthak fighters, but they could damage them, confuse them, and most importantly, they could show them something they had never seen before. Major Bennett watched it all from his mining robot's cockpit. The aliens were winning, but they weren't winning easily, and more importantly, they weren't winning the way they expected to. His radio crackled with a transmission from orbit. Commander Zektar's voice was puzzled and angry. "Humans of Mars colony, cease your attacks immediately. You cannot win this battle." Bennett picked up his microphone and smiled grimly. "Commander, this is Major Alex Bennett of the Mars Defense Force. You're right, we probably can't win, but we can sure make you work for it." Up in orbit, Zektar stared at his tactical display in confusion. His fighters were reporting damage from mining equipment and construction vehicles. It made no sense. How could primitive industrial machines hurt military spacecraft? More importantly, why were the humans still fighting? Any reasonable species would have surrendered by now. The outcome was obvious. Yet these humans kept attacking, with whatever they could find, as if they believed they could actually win. For the first time since arriving at Earth, Commander Zektar felt a small seed of doubt growing in his mind. Commander Zektar watched the tactical display as 50 Vorthak warships dropped out of hyperspace around Earth. The massive fleet spread out in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with energy shields and plasma cannons. This was the full might of the Vorthak Empire, enough firepower to destroy entire planets. He had called for reinforcements after the strange battle at Mars. His fighters had won, but the humans had fought in ways that made no sense. They used mining equipment as weapons and refused to surrender even when defeat was certain. Zektar wanted to crush any further resistance quickly and completely. "Open a channel to Earth," he commanded. The main screen showed Captain Morrison again, but this time he was not alone. Behind him stood men and women in various uniforms, representing every nation on Earth. Their faces were serious, but not afraid. "People of Earth," Zektar announced, his voice echoing across space. "You have seen what happened at Mars. Your brave defenders fought well, but they could not stop us. Now you face 50 warships, each one capable of destroying your largest cities. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Morrison stepped forward. "Commander Zektar, we've discussed your offer with the leaders of every nation on Earth. Our answer is the same as before. We will not surrender." "Then you will all die," Zektar replied coldly. "Maybe," Morrison said with a small smile. "But if we're going to die, we're going to make it interesting." The transmission ended. Zektar stared at the blank screen, feeling that same confusion he had experienced at Mars. These humans seemed to think they could actually fight his fleet. It was impossible, but their confidence was disturbing. "Sir," Sub-Commander Velek reported, "we're detecting massive movement throughout their solar system. Hundreds of ships are heading toward us." Zektar looked at the tactical display. His confusion turned to amazement as he saw what was approaching. The human fleet was unlike anything he had ever encountered. There were cargo ships, passenger liners, mining vessels, construction platforms, research stations, and even what appeared to be civilian shuttles. "Are they trying to evacuate?" Velak asked. "No," Zektar said slowly. "They're attacking us." It seemed insane. The human ships had no shields, no plasma weapons, no armor to speak of. Most of them looked like they had been built for hauling freight or carrying passengers. yet they were flying straight toward the Vorthak fleet in what looked like a coordinated assault. Captain Morrison's voice came over the radio again, but this time he was speaking to the human ships. "All vessels, this is Morrison. Operation Longshot is now active. Remember, we only get one chance at this, make it count." Dr. Ryan Cooper sat in the command center of a converted cargo ship called the New Hope. Around him, scientists and engineers worked at hastily installed control panels. The cargo holds had been gutted and filled with massive electromagnetic coils and power generators salvaged from power plants across Earth. "Ryan, are you sure this will work?" asked his assistant, Jenny Walsh, as she watched the Vorthak fleet growing larger on their screens. "Honestly," Ryan replied while checking the readings on his instruments, "I have no idea. We're about to try something that's never been tested outside of a computer simulation." The plan was desperate and brilliant at the same time. Ryan had realized that the Vorthak ships generated enormous amounts of energy for their shields and weapons. That energy had to go somewhere when the shields were struck. His theory was that a coordinated electromagnetic pulse could overload their systems if timed perfectly. The problem was generating enough electromagnetic energy to affect 50 advanced warships. The solution was typically human. If one ship couldn't do it, use 100 ships working together. "All EMP ships report status," Morrison's voice crackled over the radio. One by one, the responses came in. The New Hope was just one of 30 cargo ships that had been converted into mobile electromagnetic pulse generators. Behind them came 70 more vessels of every type, each one carrying volunteers and improvised weapons. Sarah Kim guided her converted mining ship through the asteroid field beyond Mars. Her cargo hold was filled with industrial fusion cutters and demolition charges. Beside her flew Ben Rodriguez in a construction mech that had been mounted on a small spacecraft, its welding torches modified to cut through alien hull metal. Even Dr. Helen Martinez was there, flying a research pod at the age of 70. Her cargo hold contained experimental acid compounds designed to eat through metal. She had volunteered despite having never piloted anything larger than a laboratory shuttle. "This is insane," Ben muttered over the radio. "We're attacking the most advanced military fleet in the galaxy with mining equipment and research tools." "Maybe," Sarah replied, "but it's our mining equipment and our research tools, and we know how to use them." The Vorthak fleet opened fire as the human ships approached. Brilliant plasma bolts shot across space, striking the leading human vessels. Zektar expected to see the primitive ships explode into fragments. Instead, something impossible happened. The human ships absorbed the plasma energy. Massive electromagnetic coils on their hulls glowed brighter as the alien weapons struck them. Instead of being destroyed, the ships seemed to be collecting the energy and storing it. "What are they doing?" Velak gasped. Zektar watched in amazement as more plasma bolts struck the human fleet. Each hit made the coils glow brighter. The humans were using the Vorthak's own weapons to power some kind of device. "All ships, cease fire," Zektar commanded, but it was too late. Dr. Cooper watched his instruments as the electromagnetic coils reached maximum charge. The Vorthak plasma weapons had given him exactly the power he needed. "All EMP ships, prepare for synchronized discharge. On my mark," he announced. Around him, 30 cargo ships aligned themselves in a perfect formation. Behind them, 70 more human vessels spread out in attack positions waiting for their moment. 3, 2, 1, mark. 30 ships released their stored electromagnetic energy at exactly the same moment. The combined pulse was like a invisible hammer blow that swept across the Vorthak fleet. Advanced alien computers crashed. Energy shields flickered and died. Weapon systems went offline. For the first time in his military career, Commander Zektar watched his fleet become helpless. 50 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy drifted in space like dead metal, their crews frantically trying to restart critical systems. "Now!" Morrison's voice roared over the human radio channels. The real attack began. Hundreds of small human craft that had been hiding behind asteroids, moons, and space stations suddenly appeared. They swarmed toward the disabled Vorthak ships like angry insects. Sarah Kim's mining ship fired its fusion cutters at the hull of a Vorthak cruiser. The industrial tools weren't designed as weapons, but they could cut through anything. Ben Rodriguez used his welding torches to burn through shield generators. Dr. Martinez released her acid compounds onto alien hull plating, watching it bubble and dissolve. But the most shocking sight was the sheer number of humans involved in the attack. It seemed like every person in the solar system who could pilot a spacecraft had joined the battle. There were teenagers flying personal shuttles, armed with fireworks. There were grandparents in maintenance pods carrying industrial tools. There were entire families working together to disable alien weapons systems. Zektar watched his tactical display in disbelief as his superior fleet was overwhelmed by what appeared to be the entire human species working as one giant, chaotic, completely unpredictable military force. "Sir, we're receiving damage reports from all ships," Velek reported, his voice shaking. "The humans are cutting through our hulls with industrial equipment. They're using maintenance tools to disable our weapons. Some of them are even trying to board our ships." Commander Zektar realized he was witnessing something that had never happened before in Vorthak history. His fleet was losing a battle to an enemy that shouldn't have been able to hurt them. Worse than that, the humans were winning by using the most primitive tactics imaginable, applied with a creativity and determination that no Vorthak military manual had ever anticipated. For the first time in his life, Zektar understood what it meant to be afraid. The hull of the Vorthak flagship shook as human ships rammed into its sides. Commander Zektar grabbed his command chair as sparks flew from damaged control panels around the bridge. His mighty fleet was being torn apart by creatures he had thought were helpless. "Sir, the humans are breaching our outer hull," Sub-Commander Velak reported, his voice tight with panic. "They're using cargo ships as battering rams." Zektar watched the tactical display in horror as human vessels deliberately crashed into his ships. The cargo haulers were destroying themselves, but their heavy hulls were punching holes through Vorthak armor. Through those holes, smaller human craft were pouring like water through broken dams. "Boarding parties?" Zektar asked in disbelief. "They're trying to board our ships?" It was unthinkable. No species had ever attempted to board Vorthak vessels during combat. The corridors were designed for beings much larger than humans. The layout was confusing to outsiders. Most importantly, Vorthak warriors were among the finest fighters in the galaxy. But Captain Morrison's voice came over the radio channels, calm and determined. "All boarding teams, you are go for entry. Remember your training and watch each other's backs. Let's show these aliens what humans can do." Marine Colonel Danny Torres squeezed through a hole that had been blown in the flagship's hull. Behind him came 20 Marines armed with modified plasma cutters, sonic weapons made from musical instruments and explosives created from mining charges. They moved through the alien ship like they were exploring a cave system. "This place is huge," whispered Sergeant Lisa Park as they crawled through an air vent. "How are we supposed to find anything important in here?" "Same way we always do," Torres replied. "We adapt and overcome." The Marines had trained for this moment by practicing in subway tunnels, abandoned buildings, and industrial complexes. They were used to fighting in tight spaces and confusing layouts. The Vorthak ship was bigger than anything they had practiced in, but the principles were the same. Meanwhile, Dr. Jennifer Walsh led a team of computer scientists through another breach in the ship's hull. Her job was to reach the alien computer systems and shut down their weapons. She carried a backpack full of human computers and cables, planning to interface with technology she had never seen before. "Jenny, how are you going to hack into their systems?" asked her assistant Robert Kim as they climbed through twisted metal corridors. "I'm not going to hack them," Jenny replied with a smile. "I'm going to think like they think." She had studied the Vorthak communications and ship movements for days. Everything they did followed rigid patterns and logical hierarchies. Their computer systems would probably work the same way. Instead of trying to break their security with advanced techniques, she planned to use simple logic puzzles and basic problem solving. The Vorthak warriors responded to the boarding parties exactly as their training dictated. They formed defensive positions in the main corridors and waited for the humans to attack. Their weapons were ready. Their armor was strong. They were confident in their ability to stop any assault, but the humans didn't attack where the Vorthak expected them to. Torres led his Marines through the ship's waste disposal system. Park took her team through the air conditioning ducts. Another group crawled through the spaces between the hull plates. They moved through the ship like it was a three-dimensional maze, using their experience with zero-gravity construction and deep space mining. "Contact," Torres whispered into his radio as his team encountered the first Vorthak guards. The aliens were huge, nearly 8 feet tall with thick armor-like skin and 4 powerful arms. They carried plasma rifles that could cut through steel. By every measure, they should have easily defeated the smaller humans, but the Marines had advantages the Vorthak didn't expect. They were used to fighting in confined spaces. They could move quickly through areas too small for the larger aliens. Most importantly, they didn't fight fair. Torres threw a flashbang grenade made from camera equipment. While the Vorthak warriors were blinded, Park attacked from above, dropping through a ceiling vent with a sonic weapon that screamed like 1,000 fire alarms. The sound was designed to be painful to alien hearing. The Vorthak guards stumbled and fell, clutching their heads. Before they could recover, the Marines were past them and heading deeper into the ship. Similar scenes played out throughout the year. Flagship. Human boarding parties used every trick they had learned from urban warfare, construction work, and emergency rescue operations. They fought with welding torches, industrial acids, and tools that had never been designed as weapons. Dr. Walsh reached the computer center after crawling through what she thought was a ventilation shaft. The room was filled with alien technology that looked impossibly advanced. Glowing crystals served as memory storage. Energy flowed through circuits made of materials she had never seen. "This is incredible," Robert whispered as he stared at the alien computers. "How are we going to understand any of this?" Jenny studied the layout of the computer systems. Like everything else about the Vorthak, they were organized in perfect hierarchies. Master control at the top, subsystems below, individual components at the bottom. It was logical, efficient, and completely predictable. "Help me find the main processing unit," she said, pulling cables from her backpack. "I think I know how to confuse them." While Jenny worked on the computers, Captain Morrison coordinated the most audacious part of the human plan. On Earth, engineer Carlos Mendez had been secretly building something impossible, using parts from the International Space Station, lunar mining equipment, and even roller coaster tracks from amusement parks. He had constructed a massive gravity manipulator. "Carlos, are you sure this thing will work?" Admiral Sullivan asked, over the radio. She was watching from the command center as the strange device powered up. "Honestly, Admiral, I'm making this up as I go," Carlos replied from his control station. "But the math says it should create an artificial gravity well. If it works, any ship trying to leave Earth's system will get pulled back." The device looked like something from a science fiction movie built by people who had never seen a science fiction movie. It was a collection of spinning rings, electromagnetic coils, and gravity sensors held together with construction cables and hope. "All human ships prepare for gravity pulse," Morrison announced. "If this works, the alien fleet won't be able to retreat. If it doesn't work, we're all going to die anyway." Back on the Vorthak flagship, Jenny had figured out how to connect her human computer to the alien systems. Instead of trying to break their security codes, she was feeding their computers simple logic puzzles that had no correct answers. "What are you doing to them?" Robert asked as he watched alien screens flickering with strange symbols. "I'm giving them paradoxes," Jenny explained. "Their computers are designed to find logical solutions to every problem, so I'm giving them problems that have no logical solutions. The computers keep trying to solve them, which ties up their processing power." The alien weapon systems began shutting down as their computers became confused by problems like, "This statement is false," and "Can an all-powerful being create a rock too heavy for him to lift?" The logical Vorthak minds had never considered that some questions might not have answers. Meanwhile, Torres and his Marines had reached the ship's engine room. The massive alien power plant hummed with enough energy to destroy planets. But the Marines weren't trying to destroy it. They were trying to disable it in the most human way possible. "Everyone remember the plan," Torres said as his team spread out around the engine room. "We're not going to blow anything up. We're going to take it apart piece by piece. Using tools borrowed from auto mechanics, watch repairers and electronics, technicians. The Marines began carefully dismantling the alien engine. They removed critical components, disconnected power cables, and generally treated the advanced alien technology like a broken car that needed to be fixed. The Vorthak engineers, who found them, were completely baffled. The humans weren't destroying their engine. They were taking it apart with the patience and skill of people who repaired things for a living. On Earth, Carlos threw the switch that activated his gravity manipulator. The device groaned and sparked, but it worked. An invisible force reached out into space and grabbed the Vorthak fleet like a giant hand. Commander Zektar felt his ship lurch as the artificial gravity well took hold. His navigation officer reported that their engines couldn't break free from whatever was pulling them back toward Earth. "Sir, we're trapped," Velak said quietly. "The humans have somehow created a gravity field that we can't escape." Zektar looked around his bridge. Half his control panels were dead. His computers were acting strangely. His engines were being taken apart by human mechanics. His elite warriors were being outfought by creatures a third their size. For the first time in his life, the proud Vorthak commander realized he was completely and utterly defeated. Not by superior technology or overwhelming force, but by an enemy that refused to fight by any rules he understood. The humans had turned their weaknesses into weapons and their civilian tools into military assets. They had used creativity where the Vorthak used logic, chaos where the aliens used order, and cooperation where his people relied on individual strength. Commander Zektar sat in his damaged command chair and stared at the humans standing on his bridge. His ship was disabled. His fleet was trapped. His warriors had been defeated by creatures half their size using tools meant for building and repairing. Instead of fighting, the human leader was Captain Morrison, still wearing his simple blue uniform with metal badges. Behind him stood the Marine colonel who had led the boarding party, a woman scientist with cables and computers, and several other humans who looked more like mechanics than soldiers. Zektar expected them to kill him immediately. That was what the Vorthak would have done. When you defeated an enemy, you eliminated them to prevent future problems. It was logical and efficient. Instead, Morrison walked over to where Zektar was bleeding from a head wound and offered him a medical kit. "You're hurt, Commander," Morrison said quietly. "Our medic can take a look at that if you want." Zektar stared at the human in confusion. "You wish to heal me? I came here to conquer your world and enslave your people." "Yes, you did," Morrison replied. "But the fighting is over now. There's no point in letting you suffer unnecessarily." A human medic approached with bandages and antiseptic. She was young, maybe 25 years old, with gentle hands and a calm manner. She treated Zektar's wounds the same way she would treat any injured person, without fear or hatred. "I don't understand," Zektar said as the medic worked. "Your people fought like savages. You used primitive weapons and desperate tactics, but now you show mercy to your enemies." Colonel Torres stepped forward. He was still carrying a plasma cutter that had been converted into a weapon, but his expression was tired rather than angry. "Commander, we fought hard because we had to, but we don't take pleasure in killing people who can't fight back anymore." Dr. Walsh disconnected her cables from the alien computer systems. "We're not savages, Commander. We're just very good at adapting to impossible situations." Admiral Sullivan's voice came over the communication system from Earth. "Captain Morrison, we're receiving surrender requests from 37 Vorthak ships. What are your orders?" Morrison looked at Zektar. "What do you think, Commander? Are you ready to discuss terms for your fleet's surrender?" Zektar felt something he had never experienced before. Not just defeat, but complete confusion about the nature of his enemy. The humans had fought with desperate creativity and apparent savagery, but now they were offering medical treatment and reasonable surrender terms. "Why?" he asked. "Why do you not simply destroy us? We are your enemies. We came here to conquer you." Dr. Cooper's voice came from the communication system. He was speaking from the space station where Earth scientists were analyzing the battle. "Commander, may I explain something to you about how humans think?" Zektar nodded, still trying to understand what was happening. "You studied our technology and decided we were primitive," Cooper continued. You saw our divided nations and assumed we were weak. You looked at our civilian equipment and thought we had no weapons. But you missed the most important thing about humanity, which is, we don't just adapt our tools to solve problems, Cooper explained. We adapt our thinking. When faced with a challenge we can't solve with what we have, we change how we approach the problem entirely. Morrison sat down, across from Zektar. Commander, you came here expecting to fight a conventional war against a primitive species. Instead, you found yourself fighting every human in the solar system, using every tool we could get our hands on, in ways no military manual ever described. Zektar thought about the battle. The humans had used cargo ships as electromagnetic pulse generators. They had turned mining equipment into weapons. They had boarded his ships through waste disposal systems and air vents. They had even built a gravity manipulator out of amusement park equipment. Your technology was not primitive, he said slowly. It was flexible. Exactly, Dr. Walsh said. Our computers weren't as advanced as yours, but we could reprogram them quickly for new purposes. Our ships weren't as powerful as yours, but we could modify them for any mission. Our weapons weren't as sophisticated as yours, but we could turn anything into a weapon if we needed to. Colonel Torres added, and our people weren't trained for one specific type of combat. We had miners who knew how to work in dangerous environments, engineers who knew how to build things under pressure, doctors who knew how to stay calm in emergencies. When we put all that together, we became something you weren't prepared for. Zektar began to understand what had defeated him. It wasn't superior technology or military strategy. It was the human ability to make every individual person into a problem solver who could work with any other human toward a common goal. Your greatest strength, he said thoughtfully, is that you have no greatest strength. You can become whatever you need to become. Morrison nodded. Every human contributes something different. The teenager with the personal shuttle was just as important as the admiral with the battle plans. The grandmother with the research pod was just as valuable as the Marine with the plasma cutter. We won because everyone participated, and everyone brought their own skills to the fight. Admiral Sullivan's voice came over the radio again. Commander Zektar, we've prepared quarters for you and your crew on our space station. We'd like to discuss the terms for your fleet's return to Vorthak space. You're going to let us go? Zektar asked in amazement. Eventually, Morrison replied. After we've had time to understand each other better. We're not interested in keeping prisoners or starting a war with your empire. We just want to be left alone to live our lives in peace. Dr. Cooper added, but Commander, when you return to your people, we hope you'll tell them what you learned here. Not just about our technology or our tactics, but about what happens when you underestimate humanity. Zektar stood up slowly, his wounds properly bandaged by human doctors. He looked around the bridge of his flagship, now controlled by creatures he had thought were helpless primitives. What should I tell them? Morrison thought for a moment. Tell them that humans become more dangerous, the more desperate they become, and more creative the more impossible their situation appears. Tell them that we don't fight the way other species fight, because we don't think the way other species think. And tell them, Colonel Torres added, that every human is a potential soldier, engineer, scientist, and leader all at the same time. When you threaten one of us, you're threatening all of us, and we take that very personally. Dr. Walsh disconnected. The last of her equipment from the alien computers. Most importantly, Commander, tell them that humanity's greatest weapon isn't technology or tactics. It's our refusal to accept that any problem is unsolvable. If we can't win with what we have, we'll find a way to win with what we can make. 3. Days later, Zektar stood on the observation deck of the human space station and watched his fleet preparing to depart. The humans had repaired the damage to his ships and provided supplies for the journey home. They had treated his wounded crew members and even shared some of their technology as a gesture of goodwill. But the most disturbing thing was how normal it all seemed to the humans. They had defeated the most powerful military force in their region of the galaxy, and now they were going back to their regular lives as if nothing unusual had happened. Children played in the station's recreation areas. Scientists worked on new projects, Engineers repaired equipment. Farmers tended plants in the hydroponic gardens. It was as if the entire species had simply paused their normal activities to deal with an invasion, and now they were resuming their daily routines. Morrison joined him at the observation window. "What are you thinking about, Commander?" "I'm trying to understand how you do it," Zektar replied. "How you can be farmers and fighters, scientists and soldiers, all at the same time." Morrison smiled. "We don't think of them as different things, Commander. To us, they're all just different ways of solving problems. Whether we're growing food, building machines, or defending our homes, we're all working toward the same goal. Making life better for our families and our communities." Zektar nodded slowly. "I will tell my people what I have learned here, but I don't think they will believe me." "That's okay," Morrison replied. "Hopefully, they'll be smart enough to stay away and find out for themselves." As the Vorthak fleet departed Earth's solar system, Zektar composed his report to the Empire. He wrote about the human technology and tactics, their unity and diversity, and their refusal to surrender even when facing impossible odds. But most importantly, he wrote a simple warning that would echo through Vorthak space for generations to come. Never underestimate humans. They will find a way to turn your greatest strengths into weaknesses, and their greatest weaknesses into strengths. They are not like other species. They are something new, and they are dangerous in ways we cannot predict or prepare for. The message ended with a single recommendation that became official Vorthak policy. Avoid the Sol system at all costs. Back on Earth, life returned to normal. The gravity manipulator was dismantled and its parts returned to their original purposes. The modified ships were converted back to cargo haulers and passenger liners. The weapons were put away, and the tools returned to their proper jobs.